Welcome to Avoidant Decoded, your space to truly understand the hidden patterns behind love, connection, and emotional behavior. If you're ready to see relationships with clarity instead of confusion, you're in the right place. Consider becoming a member of this channel and take a deeper step toward mastering the psychology of real connection. Many people believe that intimacy automatically leads to emotional closeness. You feel the chemistry, the warmth, the tenderness afterward, and it's easy to assume something meaningful has shifted. It feels like progress, like the distance between you is finally disappearing and those emotional walls are starting to fall. But what if that same moment isn't being experienced the same way by him? What if what feels like a deep connection to you is, for him, simply a passing moment of pleasure that fades soon after? This is where so many people get stuck in painful patterns. One person walks away feeling more connected, more invested, and more emotionally attached. The other may walk away satisfied in the moment, but unchanged when it comes to emotional depth. It's a subtle difference, but it changes everything. When this isn't understood, many women respond by giving even more of themselves. They become more open, more available, more emotionally generous, believing that continued affection will naturally deepen the bond. And that makes sense, because with someone who values connection in the same way, it often works. But with certain men, especially those who struggle with emotional closeness, the result can be completely different. The hard truth is that physical intimacy does not always create the same emotional experience for both people. While you may feel safer, more bonded, and more secure, he may internally feel overwhelmed by the intensity. From the outside, everything can look strong and connected, but internally, both people can be processing it in entirely different ways. It's like two people walking through the same doorway, but ending up in completely different places. You leave feeling hopeful and closer. He leaves feeling content for the moment, but not necessarily more committed or emotionally available. This is why so many women feel confused after an intimate experience. One night feels powerful and meaningful, but the next day he seems distant, distracted, or emotionally flat. That sudden shift feels personal, almost like rejection. But often, it isn't about cruelty or manipulation. For some men, closeness creates internal tension before it creates emotional attachment. The very thing that comforts you may trigger a need for space in him. If you don't understand this, you'll keep interpreting his behavior through your own emotional lens instead of recognizing how he actually responds to intimacy. It's like trying to warm someone who is wrapped in layers of protection. Your warmth is real, your intention is genuine, but much of it never reaches where you want it to. That's often how intimacy works for a man who has learned to protect himself emotionally. What naturally builds connection for you can feel filtered through caution and self-protection for him. Because of this, many women assume he must feel the same depth, simply because the moment felt so powerful. It's hard to imagine another perspective. But when nothing changes afterward, it leads to that painful question: why didn't anything shift? If this pattern feels familiar, it's worth paying attention. Repeated cycles like this usually point to something deeper. It doesn't mean your feelings are wrong, and it doesn't mean you're asking for too much. It may simply mean you're trying to build connection in a way that doesn't work the same for him. For many men who struggle with deeper attachment, physical intimacy often works more like a reward than a bond. It provides enjoyment, temporary relief, and a break from stress. But a reward is not the same as emotional attachment. A reward creates the thought, "That felt good, I'd like that again." Attachment creates the feeling, "This person matters to me. My life feels better with them in it." Those two experiences can look similar on the surface, but emotionally, they are completely different. Confusing them is what leads to so much heartbreak. Something can feel good, comforting, even addictive without creating loyalty or emotional investment. The same applies in relationships. If intimacy only activates pleasure but doesn't reach deeper connection, he may keep returning to the experience without truly connecting to the person. That's why chemistry alone is never enough. Attraction isn't enough. Passion isn't enough. Even frequent intimacy isn't enough. If everything revolves around enjoyment, the relationship can stay stuck in a cycle where closeness happens, but depth never grows. What many people don't realize is that deeper attachment often develops in a completely different way. For many men, real bonding grows through shared experiences rather than emotional intensity alone. It builds through working towards something together, facing challenges side by side, and feeling like you're moving in the same direction. It's less about being desired and more about feeling connected through purpose. Less about temporary moments and more about building something together. When a man starts to feel that you and him are creating, discovering, or overcoming things as a team, something shifts. The relationship moves beyond attraction and into a space where real emotional investment can develop. That's often where lasting connection begins, not just in moments of closeness, but in the sense that two lives are genuinely aligned. Many women believe emotional connection starts with deep conversations, vulnerability, and expressing feelings. And while those things matter, many men connect in a different way. They often feel closest when they're doing something together, sharing experiences, or working side by side, rather than just talking about emotions. That's why strong bonds often form during challenges, adventures, or projects. The connection builds naturally, almost without being noticed. It doesn't always start with words. It grows through presence and shared moments. When intimacy carries that same energy, everything begins to change. It no longer feels like one person is responsible for making it meaningful. It stops feeling like something that has to be done perfectly. Instead, it starts to feel like a shared experience, a partnership. The energy becomes lighter, more natural, and less pressured. Instead of feeling like he has to perform or get everything right, he begins to relax into the moment. He shifts from thinking, I need to do this well, to feeling, we're experiencing this together. That small shift creates a completely different emotional outcome. He starts to associate your presence with ease instead of pressure, with comfort instead of expectation. You become not just someone he's attracted to, but someone he feels safe around. That's where trust begins. That's where emotional security slowly starts to form. That's where something deeper can finally grow. This is why the energy around intimacy matters so much. When a man feels like he has to lead, impress, or carry the entire experience, he often gets stuck in his head. Even if no one is judging him, he may still feel like he is. That creates tension, and tension disconnects him from the moment. But when the experience feels mutual, playful, and alive, everything changes. He becomes present, he relaxes, he connects. Connection grows in presence. Pressure destroys it. That's why intimacy becomes truly meaningful when it feels like exploration instead of obligation, when it feels like something you're creating together, not something one person has to deliver. Instead of turning every moment into something loaded with expectations or silent emotional pressure, let it become a space where both of you can genuinely discover each other, a space where it's okay to be imperfect, a space where neither person feels like they have to carry the entire emotional weight alone. Many women feel discouraged when a man seems distant after a deeply meaningful moment. But sometimes it's not that he wants less closeness. Sometimes he simply finds it hard to stay relaxed within that closeness, unless it feels balanced, shared, and easy to breathe in. There's another layer to this that often goes unnoticed. After intimacy, many people expect emotional openness to increase right away. But for some men, the opposite happens. Instead of moving closer emotionally, they instinctively pull back. Not because the moment didn't matter, but because closeness itself can trigger internal tension they don't fully understand. While you might be hoping for deeper conversation or stronger connection afterward, his system may already be trying to create space. This can happen even if he's still physically right there with you. On the outside, he may seem calm, but inside he could be trying to manage feelings that suddenly feel intense. Without understanding this, it's easy to see that distance as rejection, and the natural reaction is to move closer, ask questions, seek reassurance, or try to deepen the moment even more. But that timing can unintentionally increase the pressure he's already feeling. The more pressure builds, the more likely he is to withdraw. And the more he withdraws, the more confusion grows between both of you. This is where many relationships get stuck. You're wondering why he feels distant after something that meant so much. He's wondering why everything suddenly feels overwhelming. Neither of you realizes that a quiet stress response is running underneath it all. But once you understand this dynamic, everything starts to shift. You stop assuming that every change means rejection. You stop trying to fix every moment of distance. Instead, you begin to understand timing. You learn when to nurture closeness and when to give it space to settle naturally. One of the healthiest ways to approach this is to make the entire experience feel shared, not just the physical moment, but before and after as well. Connection grows more easily when both people feel involved, not when one person is silently hoping the experience will create something deeper on its own. Bring your energy into the moment. Let your personality show. Let him feel that you're part of the experience with him, not waiting for him to carry it all. Often, it's the small things that make the biggest difference. A real reaction, a playful smile, a genuine laugh. A willingness to guide, respond, and engage naturally. These are the moments that turn something mechanical into something alive. Men who struggle with emotional closeness tend to relax when intimacy feels like exploration instead of expectation. When it stops feeling like a perfect performance and starts feeling like two people learning each other, something powerful begins to happen. Participation creates involvement, involvement creates presence, and presence creates moments that actually stay with someone. That's why shared experiences matter so much. People bond most deeply through moments they create together, not roles they try to perform perfectly. The more mutual it feels, the less need there is for distance, defense, or emotional hiding. Even simple communication plays a big role here. Not heavy conversations or deep analysis, just natural interaction that keeps both of you connected to the moment. A little curiosity, a little honesty, a bit of humor, a simple check-in. These small things can pull someone out of their thoughts and back into the experience. For men who tend to disappear into their own minds, this is especially important. Silence can sometimes push them further inward, while gentle communication brings them back into connection. A lot of people think talking ruins intimacy. In reality, the right kind of communication can strengthen it. Think of it like building a fire together. If one person stays silent while the other keeps guessing, it becomes awkward and disconnected. But when both people communicate, adjust, and respond, the fire grows stronger. Connection works the same way. Small, real interactions often matter more than trying to make everything perfect. If you've been taught that intimacy has to be serious, silent, or perfectly done to matter, it might be time to let that belief go. Sometimes the most meaningful moments come from laughter, honesty, imperfection, and shared discovery. There's one more piece that changes everything, and it's rarely talked about. It's the quiet pressure attached to these moments. Many women enter intimacy with an unspoken hope. Deep down, they want this to be the moment that changes everything, the moment that removes uncertainty, the moment that proves how he really feels. Even if it's never said out loud, that expectation can still be felt, and people who are naturally guarded are often very sensitive to that kind of pressure. They may not even be able to explain it, but they feel when a moment is carrying more weight than it should. And when that happens, their instinct is usually not to move closer, but to protect themselves. This is why it's so important not to place the entire future of a relationship on one experience. Intimacy was never meant to carry that responsibility on its own. It works best when it's part of an already growing connection, not when it's expected to create that connection from nothing. When intimacy becomes a test, everything changes. You start analyzing every detail, looking for reassurance in every word, every glance, every reaction. At the same time, he starts feeling expectations he may not know how to meet. Instead of feeling free to connect, both people end up feeling pressure. But when intimacy exists within a foundation of trust, friendship, laughter, honesty, and shared effort, it becomes something completely different. It stops feeling like a burden and starts feeling like a bridge. And the strongest connections are the ones both people choose to walk across together. If you truly want emotional closeness, focus less on using intimate moments to pull him closer and more on creating an environment where closeness feels natural for him. Become someone around whom he feels at ease. Someone he can be real with, someone who makes emotional honesty feel safe instead of risky. Because over time, if trust begins to grow, you'll start to see parts of him that he doesn't show easily. Not just the caring side or the affectionate side, but the real side, the uncertain side, the imperfect side, the side that struggles, the side that carries fears, insecurities, and thoughts he rarely shares. Many people imagine emotional intimacy as something that only reveals beautiful things. But real closeness reveals everything. And everything includes the messy, confusing, uncomfortable parts too. As his walls slowly come down, you may begin to understand how he really thinks about commitment, pressure, trust, vulnerability, and love itself. You may start to see why he pulls away. You may witness fears he's been carrying for years. You may notice how he copes when life feels overwhelming. You may hear thoughts he has never said out loud before. That kind of honesty can be deeply meaningful, but it can also be challenging. Now you're no longer interacting with a version of him that exists in your imagination. You're engaging with the real person beneath all the defenses and layers he's built over time. And real people are rarely as simple or predictable as the stories we create about them. That's why the goal of building a deeper connection shouldn't be about chasing reassurance. It should be about being willing to see things as they truly are. Real intimacy isn't about uncovering some perfect, ideal version of someone. It's about creating a space where both people feel safe enough to be real, and then having the maturity to decide if what you see is something you can genuinely accept. So what matters most here? Don't confuse passion with real attachment. Don't assume that intense moments automatically mean commitment is forming. And don't believe that just because you're being vulnerable, the other person will suddenly feel emotionally safe. Instead, start paying attention to the kind of experience you're creating together. Ask yourself if things feel balanced, or if one of you is doing most of the emotional work. Notice whether the connection feels light and natural, or heavy with expectations that aren't being spoken out loud. Think about how he feels after spending time with you. Does he feel supported, or does he feel pressure? Does the connection invite him to open up, or does it make him want to pull back and protect himself? These questions often reveal more truth than any typical relationship advice ever could. If you've been stuck in a pattern where the chemistry is strong, but the emotional bond never really deepens, this might be the shift you've needed. Stop pouring energy into something that only looks meaningful on the surface, and start focusing on what actually builds connection in his emotional world. This doesn't mean ignoring your needs. It doesn't mean changing who you are or making yourself smaller just to keep someone comfortable. It means becoming more aware of how connection actually works. It means understanding that people open up in different ways and at different speeds. And when you figure out what truly creates closeness, things stop feeling forced. The confusion starts to clear, the constant overthinking fades, the emotional drain begins to ease, and instead of always reaching for someone who feels distant, you begin to notice them moving toward you too. That's a completely different experience. Take a moment to reflect on your own situation. Maybe you thought one more deep conversation would finally change everything. Maybe you believed stronger chemistry would solve the uncertainty. Maybe you blamed yourself every time things felt close, only for distance to return again. If any of that resonates, you're not alone. The difference now is that you can see the pattern, and once you see it clearly, everything starts to shift. When you understand the gap between temporary intensity and real emotional connection, you stop chasing moments that feel powerful but go nowhere. You stop tying your self-worth to someone else's inconsistency. You stop investing in cycles that keep disappointing you. Instead, you become more intentional. You become more patient with timing. You become more aware of how pressure affects connection. You grow more confident in what actually builds trust, and you start focusing on something sustainable instead of hoping for a sudden breakthrough. That's where real change begins. Not through trying harder, manipulating situations, or waiting for something magical to happen, but through understanding. Because once you recognize the difference between excitement, expectation, and true partnership, you'll never look at relationships the same way again. And that awareness can lead you toward the healthiest connection you've ever experienced. As we come to the end of this, remember that real connection is rarely created the way most people think it is. Many believe that stronger chemistry, deeper vulnerability, or intense emotional moments automatically lead to closeness. But human connection is more complex than that. What feels meaningful to you may not feel the same to someone else, and misunderstanding that difference often leads to confusion, frustration, and self-doubt. The truth is, attachment isn't built on intensity alone. It develops through trust, consistency, emotional safety, shared experiences, and the sense that both people are moving forward together. For someone who is emotionally guarded, connection takes time. It grows through moments that feel safe and natural, not moments filled with pressure or expectation. That's why it's important to stop measuring a relationship by how powerful a single moment feels. A moment can be exciting, even unforgettable, but lasting emotional bonds are built through patterns, not isolated experiences. They form through repeated interactions that build trust over time. They deepen when both people feel respected, understood, and accepted. Real closeness happens when being together feels comforting, not overwhelming. One powerful shift you can make is to stop asking, "How do I make this person feel closer to me?" and start asking, "What kind of environment allows closeness to grow on its own?" That shift moves you away from chasing validation and toward understanding what actually creates connection. True intimacy isn't about showing a flawless version of yourself or expecting one from someone else. It's about seeing the full picture, strengths, insecurities, hopes, and fears. As trust builds, reality becomes clearer. Healthy relationships aren't based on fantasy. They're built on the ability to face reality together with honesty and compassion. If you've spent a long time trying to figure someone out, hoping that one more effort or conversation would finally change things, this is your chance to approach it differently. Not by giving up on connection, but by understanding it more deeply. Not by doing more, but by becoming wiser about what actually creates lasting bonds. The real connection is not built on fleeting passion or intense moments, but on consistency, understanding, and emotional safety. What feels powerful in the moment does not always translate into lasting attachment, and recognizing this truth changes everything. When you stop chasing intensity and start valuing genuine alignment, the confusion fades and clarity takes its place. True intimacy grows slowly through shared experiences and mutual effort, not pressure or expectation. And once you understand that, you begin creating connections that are not only meaningful, but lasting.